then. There we are.
Okay, got it. Okay. All right. So this is like my little whiteboard here. And so you should be seeing now my little handwritten notes. And I'll just drag those around. So look, the main thing when Richard first asked me, and I sort of like gave a little subtitle in the running sheet of all the talks that were going to happen, I think probably the number one thing to remember is make people feel useful. People love turning up to a practice and walking away and thinking, oh, yeah, I was really useful there. But of course, now comes the tricky bit. That's different things to different people. Some people, so that's your overarching principle. Try and make everybody feel not just valued in the sense of just lavish the praise on, but I'll get to that later, but making them feel useful. Now, you've got to be able to work out what that means to different people. You've got to read the room a bit here, because some people feel they're being useful if they try something new. Like most people, we have this idea in ringing that every time people come along, they want to try something new. Yeah, some people are like that. But actually, if I had to rate these, and I'll just put a little tick system here, I'd reckon people actually trying doing something new, 1 tick. All right. I reckon that appeals to a certain number of people. A lot of people actually like revisiting something they once had success with. There's a little bit of a good memory already there and you can build on it. And so that third one there, of actually thinking, right, I've rung some Bob doubles before. Yeah, I'd like to, but it might not have been for a while. I'd like to give Bob doubles another go, That's probably more appealing to more people, actually, when it comes to it. And the one that you can never underestimate, and it actually appeals to about 99% of ringers, 99% of the time. Don't they love helping other people? We are all helpful sort of people. And so never underestimate how much of a kick people get out of actually just being asked to make up the numbers in ringing. Even if it's just something they're really, it's going to be something they're confident at because they know actually they're going to do it well. Most people don't get a kick out of like smashing their way around and stuffing up every touch. That they walk away with a bit of an empty feeling then. So if the other end of the extreme there is just make sure that they get as many goes at things they can do. So in terms of, I think we tend to, when we're setting up for a practice, we tend to overrate that one there. And in fact, it's the one that's probably less appealing than you think to most people. All right. So in that sense, getting people involved and doing stuff they can already do actually is a winning strategy. Okay, now you're running a practice. Now, what I'm saying here depends a lot. The biggest factor that affects the way you run a practice is how many people walk into the room. All right. It simply is the most overarching guiding thing you've got to work around. Now, I'll get a bit further down there, but plan ahead. Number one, don't just turn around and go, let's ring this. Now let's ring spot some learner. Yep, that. Let's ring that. You've got to be planning about 4 rings ahead at any given time. Even when there's, let's say you had a 6-bell tower and you had like 8 or 9 people in the room, where you've got 1.5 times as many ringers as ropes, you still probably need to be planning probably 3 rings ahead. If you're in an 8-bell tower where you've got 12 to 16 ringers in the room, you need to be planning 4 rings ahead. And working backwards from that point. Now, exactly what you're planning will depend on what people have said. Now, it's in terms of the rules there. So rules, plan ahead, about 4 touches, and also give people warning. Even good ringers, all right? You've got someone there who, you've got someone there who wants to ring, Cambridge Minor, and they've been learning it, and they're ready to go. And you turn around to somebody who has rung quarter peals of this stuff. but it hasn't been for months or years, just whisper in their ear, as you go past them in the tower. Oh, we would bring in Cambridge Minor in, about 2 or 3 rings time. And you watch 50% of the time they dive for a diary, and just make sure. And they do want to be good. Nobody wants to be sort of sandbagged. So give them a chance. Don't be inflexible. Like, sometimes I can get caught out here. I'm thinking, right, I'm going to ring bob doubles over here, and I'm going to have X and Y in that. Then we're going to ring some grants of triples, and I'll have A and B in there. And then somebody walks into the room at that moment where I think, oh, that person's got to be in the bob doubles, because we're not going to revisit bob doubles here for another 20 minutes, and they aren't good. They're not going to survive in the grants of triples. So, right, we've now got to ring bob doubles twice, or we've got to bring that person into bob doubles, and one of those bob doubles ringers, mate, you're ringing grants of triples, that sort of thing. So you've got to be planning ahead, but you've also got to be pretty sort of like flexible in your thinking, particularly when extra people walk into the room. And also, most people do this. I think most people I've seen who run a practice are pretty good at saying to people when they walk in, what do you want to ring? Or, what would you like to do? Or call, that sort of stuff. And so most people are pretty good at asking that. And then it's a matter of trying to make it happen. All right, now we get to the tips, and I'll say not rules. You can't have rules, because if you have rules that are inflexible, you become your own worst enemy. Okay, now, just off the top here, have a look at this first tip. Try and get people ringing every second time. It's interesting, when I mentioned to my daughter Jenny that I was giving this talk, that's the one thing she said that she remembered me saying so often is, never get anybody sitting out more than twice in a row unless it's unavoidable. And that sometimes means you have to cut back the asking rate. And guess what? That's a winner. That actually wins with people. And so I put the example there. Be prepared to ring plain hunt on 7 instead of grants of doubles. This is in a situation where, I'll put in the note in the square brackets there, it's not always possible to get people ringing every second time. If you've got, where the number of ringers is greater than 2 times the number of ropes. Now, I hope we're all blessed with that problem again one day soon. But it doesn't often happen. But if you get close to that situation where you've got, say, 12 or 14 ringers in an 8-bell tower, or, 9 or 10 ringers in a 6-bell tower, it actually can get tricky to get everybody ringing, get them ringing every second time, because it means sometimes you think, okay, well, that person just rang their bob double, or they plain hunted, the treble to some doubles, and now we're going to try this. And I'm afraid that sometimes means, well, we suddenly throw in some call changes, and you mix it up with things like, okay, to this person who's just rung the treble to bob doubles and may have not done it that well, you then say, right, we're going to ring some call changes on 6 now, and Joey, could you ring the 5? And, and it's sort of like, oh, there's a different challenge there. The challenge is, it's a bigger bell. There are challenges of all sorts that really light people's fires, particularly then when they come off that and they go, and they've done it quite well. And you just go, that was well done. And it's a genuine bit of praise. They know they did it well, and you saw it. So be prepared to stick to this rather than like this. The second tip here. How often have you heard this? How often have I seen this one written down? The idea of one learner at a time. Oh, I heard that from so many people. I have seen it written so many times, and I've seen it absolutely kill practices. Because we're going through one learner at a time, somebody is sitting out for like half an hour. I reckon that's poor policy. I reckon that question I've written in blue under there is a much better question to be asking yourself. It's a bit the other extreme. How many learners can you involve in the ringing and still succeed? All right. You've got to be careful, of course. There's a fine line here. You can't just put 6 learners in there and watch it completely blow out. No one feels good about that. Okay, so the fine line is between those two. But if you can get 2 learners in at a time and say, right, I've got one person here, they know they're playing course of grants to doubles. Right, I'm going to stick them on the 3. I'm going to put someone behind them. And I've also got someone here who's, just hunting, and I'm going to get them to hunt the treble. I'm going to give them a lesson in how it's always the 2 that takes you off first, that sort of stuff. You grind that into them first, and then you can get both those people through at once, and possibly someone on the tenor who hasn't had a lot of practice. And you come out of that touch as a ringing master. You can't show it too much in the ringing room, but inside you're going, yes, I have just got 3 people through a touch there. And meanwhile, all those superstar ringers are sitting over there telling, Peel stories, and they're loving that too. All right. So don't cling too strongly to this one learner at a time. I know the idea. I'm familiar with the principle of one learner at a time, but there is a better way. Try and get 2 in if you can. All right. Try it now. General principle, if you've got someone who's learnt something, I say a learner who's learnt a method, try and get them at least 2 goes at that in a practice. All right. Also the number of times I've seen this, person, okay, we're going to ring a touch of grants to doubles. The person's done their homework and they reckon they've got it. And we ring the touch of grants to doubles and they nail it, absolutely nail it. And then somebody goes, all right, well, grants to triples now then, and it's just completely a disaster. Or they've learnt their playing course of grants to doubles and somebody says, oh, let's ring a touch then. You're that good. Yeah, you're great. And it's a disaster. Don't feel you have to. You can, if with the right prep there, you can get a person to take another step, but don't feel you have to. They're going to walk away. If they turned up there having learnt their playing course of grants to doubles and they get through it and absolutely don't make one mistake and you can see they're pumped, just get them to do it again and they'll be double pumped. They will come away just going like, oh, I had a great night. And that's what brings them back. All right. So don't feel you have to push them, but it depends on the person. The person might just, might be waiting to be asked, but you can have a little questionnaire to find out, do you know what to do at the bob if you're in thirds at the bob or something like that, or if you're in the hunt and they call a bob, do you know what's going to happen? And if they know what's going on, sure, go that direction. But if you feel quickly that, no, that's their limit, just reinforce that limit. I'll just make that a bit smaller. Oh, it's too small. All right, now praise. Don't praise absolute disasters. People know you're just, blowing smoke. They know you're not genuine. But it doesn't take much. You've got to just pick you've just got to pick the one thing that they did well. You can have someone, what I've got there. You can have a person who, they're hunting and when they hold up off the lead, they're actually spotting their first bell really well. But then after that, they get lost just every time. But at the end of the ring, you can say, look, you spotted that first bell really well. And they know they did. And you can give them that praise. Don't feel you just have to go, oh, you were magnificent. No, I wasn't. They know, but you can equally, if you can pick out the one thing they did well, tell them about it. And also people they're coming along now. They're doing something for the first time. They know that they don't always do it perfectly, and they do want to be told what they can improve. So things like, you've seen people do this, when you do lead and then thirds and then lead, say you're doing just, the end of the playing course on the 3 in grants to doubles, and you're running through into another course, and you've got the 1 and the 2 hunt through. Well, you go up over the 1 and 2, and then you go back under the 1 and the 2 to get to lead. And I've seen plenty of people look for another bell, like as though it can come from anywhere, but they look for that. And you just simply say to them, no, make sure it's those same 2 bells again. When you go to thirds and then back in again, just those same 2 bells. And really just point that out to them. And people like having those things pointed out, little specifics. To that end, if you've got a busy practice, if you happen to have, like, as I say, we're in times 2, getting close to that, then use deputies. Again, People love being asked to help someone, something they know how to do. They don't have to be the best ringer in the room. In fact, it's often the best thing you can do for a small point like that is just to grab someone who's quite familiar with grants to doubles and say, can you just point out to, Joey at the board that, what happens when he's doing thirds, the two bells under him, how he has to go back past them again, and get somebody doing that at the board. That person who you've asked to be your deputy will actually be uplifted by it. So let's be prepared to use deputies at the board. Also, you've got a lot on your mind. You want to be spending as much time counting heads around the room, trying to work out, hang on, that person didn't ring last time. Oh, I can't actually squeeze them into this touch. They've got to ring the time after that because I'm leading them out twice in a row. That's an absolute, the end of the line for me is if I leave someone out twice in a row, they've got to be ringing the next time, no matter what. And so, use deputies, conductors, or even other people in the ringing. Watch people's eyes. We have standard behind us, and they're good. It's really good to use them, and people again like being asked. But often the first sign that the person is going to go wrong or isn't seeing what they're supposed to see is they look the wrong way, and that's often easier to detect for people in the circle of ringers than it is for the person standing behind them. So be prepared to, conductors, watch the eye, particularly in short touches. It's not, if you're just there ringing a 5-minute piece, you just need to be, and just see, if particularly if it's repeated, they always, when they, go past the treble, they look the wrong way and you think, no, the hunt bell's that one over there, and that gives you something to say at the end of the touch and say, you're missing the hunt bell. You were looking right, should have been looking left. So from a conductor point of view, keep your eye on their eyes. As ringing master, and this, just say this very last point here and say it very generally. Ring it, if there's enough people in the room, ring as little as possible. Try and remember, your job is to get as many of the other people in the room through a good ringing experience, and you will do that much better. The number of times I find myself, and I've got people in my own tower going, oh no, Andrew, why don't you ring this time? I said, I'm too busy. And the answer is, I'm sitting there I'm looking while they're ringing. I'm looking around the room going, okay, all right, okay, we're getting towards the end. You want to build up your practice generally, but don't feel you've got to finish with, 8 spliced, all right? That can happen somewhere along the line, somewhere earlier in the piece. Particularly other thing, you ask people when they come in, what would you like to ring? Will you be staying to the end, or something like that? You don't want to, you're relying on, you want to bring Stedman triples, and if, X walks in and it just makes 7 Stedman triples ringers and you go, oh, you beauty. And so you're getting your band frame for that one and you realize that, Billy over there, Billy Bloggs, has got to go at, half an hour before the end. So you make sure you get that one up before that can happen. And so you're bringing that one forward in the schedule and you're thinking, right, now there's about 5 ringers here who can't ring this. So they're going to have to be, pushed to either side. We'll have to ring call changes on 10 here, or something like that, because we need to get all these people in. So there's a lot of it is thinking on your feet, and you'll do that better if you're not actually ringing as much. But you'll feel good at the end of the night. I come away, if I've run a good practice and I haven't rung much, I don't walk away thinking, oh, I didn't get to ring much. I walk away going, yes, I had 5 people walk out of that practice going, gee, I enjoyed myself tonight. Thanks very much. That's what puts a smile on my face. All right. And I'm at 21 minutes. All right. Is now, I think the general format is over to questions. Are there any specific questions people want to throw in there? And just remember to unmute yourself when you do.
I had a question, Andrew.
Yes.
How much emphasis do you place on placing bands? And do you place every ringer or just the learner, or does it depend on the situation?
Every ringer and the stander behind us. All right. Because some of them they don't see out of one side, Oh, look, really comes down to a lot of, well, look, I ring, most of the practices I run are at Burwood, a light 8. It's not too critical, but they're a tailor 8, so the size gets quite a bit bigger, as you go around. It really comes down to people's general competence. But again, or when you're placing them for methods and things, that often sorts itself out. They've learnt it from the 3, that sort of thing. And the rest, you've got probably half the band there. It won't matter where they ring. I can still remember the last branch practice I ran at Burwood, which earlier this year. There was a young bloke named Richard Webster there. And I didn't realise that, I just said, he filled in a lot for me. He got his one glory moment. We managed to ring a touch of Bristol Major. But he walked out of there that night, and I never forget this, because I didn't realise it, but he just goes, I said, okay, good night. He goes, yeah, that was a great practice. He goes, I nearly circled the tower. He says, I rang 7 of the 8 bells. What a great little thing to be doing in the background. When I say, Richard, could you fill in? Just grabs a different bell every time. So there's, things like that can go on as well. But don't be afraid when it comes to, particularly if you cut it back to call changes. Take some of those people who are learning to hunt the treble for doubles, and therefore they're ringing the 3 at my tower all the time, and say, oh, could you ring the 7 for call changes? And most people get, could I get you to cover or something like that? And people, actually just to ring the tenor. So yeah, you can place your learners primarily, but then you need to also, place some people, but largely just the learners, and then fill out once you get to a point where you've got people there that can ring anything on anything, doesn't matter.
Can I add a couple of comments into that? Because I've had experience with that. Some towers, or some people think when they go to towers where they place every single band, they're like, oh, this is a bit, not hoity-toity, but, a bit, as though they get instantly scared. Oh, I'm only allowed to ring this bell or that bell. But that's not the intention. As Andrew just said, could you please ring the 7 for some call changes rather than ring the 7, ring the 6, ring the 5. I do that, which can come across a bit cold or things like that. Yeah. So yeah, the delivery is an important thing.
Yeah. Well, look, on delivery, one thing I meant to have in my notes, and it skipped in my mind when I was writing them down. Try and it might seem like a minor language thing, but to ringing masters everywhere, try and avoid, when you're putting a band on deck, saying, rightio, we're going to ring Bob doubles this time for Joey. All right. Oh, no, avoid the language. What you do is, we're going to ring Bob doubles. Joey, can you ring the 2? Billy, can you ring the treble? Trixie, can you ring the 3? And then you 3, and you point to 3 ugly blokes, or whatever, and say, can you fill up on 4, 5, 6, please? And so you place the ones you need to place, but you don't try and avoid the language of saying we're ringing this for such and such. It just adds pressure. And the fact is, it shows that you're not doing your job properly, because in fact, 2 or 3 of those other people, it's part of what they're getting to ring tonight as well. They might not be something that is challenging for them, but they'll still get a blast out of doing it well. The other thing I've had to add to my game a little bit is, I've got it under control. I've got 4 rings planned ahead, and someone comes up in the room, and I'm thinking, right, oh look, with this Joey just walked in the door. Oh, we've got a Stedman triples band here. Oh, you beauty, and I'm going to have that in 4 or 5 rings time, because that'll really give a lot of people a blast. And I'm already sidled over to some bloke, probably I say, Tom, could you call some Stedman triples in a few rings time and get that organised? And then someone comes over and says, they've looked around the room and they've had this glorious defining moment, and they've gone, oh, we could ring Stedman triples. And they come over and they share it with you like it's a newfound revelation. And it is so easy to want to go, bugger off, I've got that organised already. Or, you can sometimes be a little bit, the best thing you can do at that point is just go, that's a great idea. I'll make sure we do. All right. make sure that people think they've had good ideas. Doug, you have a question.
Yes, Andrew. Firstly, thank you very much. It's an excellent presentation. I'd love to see it printed up and sent out to our tower. I'd just like to make a comment about beginners or the weakest ringer in your group. I always like to make sure that they are included in the very first ring of any practice or Sunday ringing, because there's no sort of, I guess, standard that's been preset by the ring before it, if you had one before, and they feel more comfortable that way. So that's just my comment.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's a good idea. Look, what I find I do is it depends who's in the room, you know, but certainly the other one I like to do is on the same vein though, is actually on Sunday morning at Burwood, I mean, cut back the asking rate, put the learner in on the 6, you know, and say, let's ring some call changes. Don't necessarily feel that the service touch has to be some sort of glory piece for the better ringers. I've seen that go wrong a few times.
That's something we can't do.
That's right. So just if that person will come back next time if they think, oh, I'm valued enough to be put in, you know, at the pointy end of the game, you know. And the way to cope with that is not to go for any glory touch. Do that earlier. You know, I agree totally, Doug. You know, get them ringing, but I get them ringing every second time. If it's first or last, I'm not too worried about it. But perhaps for Sunday morning ringing, more important to have them last as much as first. And look, don't ever forget those people downstairs in the church. Every time I've ever heard anything back from them, they go, "Oh, the bells were wonderful. Thank you for ringing." And you've walked away thinking, we blew out every second time, you know, we fired out. And they probably think, oh, that's what they do on the third Sunday after Trinity. You know, they really just don't know. So let's not get too upset with each other when something goes wrong. The people downstairs think it's magnificent. And we can always get back there next time. And what's more important than being absolutely brutally honest about the quality of the ringing to each other is to make sure that people feel appreciated and useful, and so they'll come back the next time. But it's got to be genuine, and there's ways of making that genuine, you know, just by simply getting them doing stuff they can do well. I think that's the secret.
Can I add another little top tip?
Yep.
One thing that you see from a lot of ringing masters, I've seen a lot as well, is they're just going off memory, right? Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. It's all up here and all that. Don't feel you have to do it in your head. Don't be afraid to use, I was going to say pen and paper, pencil and paper, because you need to rub things out. Or if you're using pen, scrub it out, because as Andrew said, the practice evolves. You know, Joey walks in, whatever. And also you can write a grid of who's been there, and you can keep track of who's not rung for a couple of touches. Oh, we've got to do a touch for them or whatever.
Look, in fact, Peter, thank you. Another one I was thinking earlier today I should write on my list and I didn't do it is, and this is just because I'm getting old, but what I do is people come into the Tower of Burwood, I write their name on the board. And it's just so that I can, you know, if somebody I haven't seen for a few, I turn around, I look at this bloke, he's got grey hair and glasses, and I think he looks familiar. And I look up on the board and I go, oh, Bill Parents. Yeah. You know, oh, that's him. But having the names on the board is a good start for that. If you can't juggle it all in your head, and then actually put it up there. And again, when you're not ringing, stand next to the board and just put little ticks next to who is ringing this time, so you can keep a better, more. There's nothing more gutting from a ringing master point of view than you turn around at the end of the night and you realise that some person in the corner has only rung twice in the whole night. And they're not coming back anytime soon. And you just go, oh no, that was so avoidable. So whatever it takes, if it means just I put the names on the board, and I sort of like say to people, oh, this is just so everybody knows everybody's names, you know, and as they come in, I keep adding them on the board. It's so I can remember. But it also is very handy for other people, because you see people glancing at the board occasionally and then going, oh, Marmaduke, how are you? You know, and they didn't remember his name was Marmaduke, but they've had a quick glance at the board. Oh, saved them. So it helps everybody actually writing the names on the board as people arrive. All right. Okay. Well, what I will do is I will make sure I just save this file and I'll attach it to an email to Richard. And that's just my thoughts